Say, dirtbag. This is Kid Shriner, the voice of the Green Arrow.
This is George Newbern, the voice of Superman.
You are listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam.
Streaming at DCAUreview.com and on your favorite podcast app.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 390 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal. With me, my good friend and brother, Liam. Liam, also known as the Batman of Ragebait. I'm sticking with it. We're going to keep it alive for at least a couple of weeks here. See how long it sticks around. But Liam, we are continuing here in our Superman-themed month. Reviewed one of our final episodes of Superman the Animated Series that we had yet to review. We looked at a re-review of one of maybe the best, if not the best, Superman episode of all time with the late Mr. Kent last week, or 2 weeks ago. Last week we did a spotlight episode of the anti-Superman, Bizarro, with a DCAU character spotlight. And to wrap things up here with our Superman-themed month, we are taking a trip around the multiverse, but it's to a show that's actually not named Superman for once.
That's right. So we are talking about the oft-forgotten mid-2000s little diamond in the rough known as the Legion of Superheroes animated series, which ran for 2 seasons. And although his name is not in the title, his logo certainly is. So it's an appropriate. It's a Superman starring show. It was commissioned around the time of the Brandon Routh Superman Returns film. For a little bit of corporate synergy, they wanted a new Superman show on the air at the time, and producer James Tucker pitched a Legion show with a younger Superman starring, and that got the green light. So here we are. As mentioned, I believe you said, Kyle, we've reviewed one episode of this some 300 episodes ago. So it has been literally like half a decade since we've last talked about this show. But yeah, excited to talk about Legion of Superheroes, and specifically the season 1 episode Legacy.
That's right, Liam. We'll be excited to talk about that. And yeah, thanks for giving us the background on this show. As I mentioned before we went on the air, yes, we had reviewed the pilot episode for this show, Man of Tomorrow, several years ago, but I remembered absolutely nothing about this show other than it's Superman in the future with the Legion of Superheroes. So it'll be interesting to recap this episode with you today. And we'll talk about that in just a second when we get our official plot synopsis for this episode, which originally aired on the Cartoon Network on October the 7th, 2006. And before we get that official IMDb plot synopsis for Legacy, we'll remind you that it is, of course, as it always is, brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. We invite you to head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and become a supporter of the podcast. Maybe you just want to give us a little shout out, give us a little liquid encouragement, not that kind, but the caffeinated liquid encouragement kind, the coffee kind. We invite you to support us with a one-time support option. You can do that at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review. It's a way for us to be encouraged in the work that we do here on the pod. But hey, you want to take that a little bit further, you take that to the next level even, then you can become a monthly supporter of the podcast. And we have 3 different levels for you to support the podcast. All of them come with various perks. The top tier, though, our Super Friend tier, is the most popular tier, and that one includes the perk to ask us a question about the episode that we're reviewing and hear your answer on the air. So if you would like to support the podcast in a way that gets you some really neat perks, encourages us to keep up the good work, and allows you to hear a question of your choosing answered here on the air each and every week, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review, and please support the podcast today.
Absolutely. So this is the synopsis for A Legacy, which is written by Scott Sonneborn, directed by Tim Maltby, with music by our dynamic music partners, and animation by Dong Wu. And that synopsis reads as such. Superman saves the life of Alexis, one of the wealthiest people in the galaxy. Alexis and Superman become fast friends, but when Superman's Legion responsibilities get in the way of their friendship, Alexis decides to do something about it. It's pretty good. That's a sizzle. That's a sizzle for a TV guide or something.
Yeah, dig that. Not terrible. Yeah, I give it a solid B. Good job, IMDb synopsis. We will do our best here to take that B even further here. Give us an A. We'd love an A for our own synopsis here, but you will be the judge of that, I suppose. We kick things off here at Liam with a rather large robot that seems to be climbing up the side of a building here at the beginning. And we hear a female voice from inside the robot as it jumps off the side of a building, soaring through traffic below. In the futuristic, of course, we mentioned this is set in the future of the Legion of Superheroes, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is it the 30th or the 31st? I forget which century it is.
31st.
31st. Okay, 31st century here. So we got flying cars. We got a lot of technological advancements here. So it's not as if she's just free falling and base jumping and not hitting any birds flying through the air. That she's creating some havoc here with her soaring through the crowd.
Is all this really so terribly necessary?
Yep. Come on, Woodhouse, live a little.
Having a bit of trouble?
Nothing to worry about. The ejector's not working, but I can handle this. Thanks for the save.
Sure. Anytime. Who was that?
But thankfully, here flies in our hero for the day, the Man of Steel himself, flies in to save the robot mech suit before it's able to hit the ground. She thanks him briefly, but then flies off in a bit of a huff. And we mention that, and picking her up actually with a car happens to be her robot butler, whose name is Woodhouse. So this is important because he comes back to play later on. I love his British accent. We'll talk about that later. But we cut back to the Legion of Superheroes Tower, also known as the Clubhouse.
The strangest thing just happened.
Let me guess. You accidentally walked through another transmatter gate and ended up on Mars.
Very funny. No, it's just... I met this girl.
Really? What's her name? What's she look like? Oh, is she cute?
I hardly got a look at her. I don't even know her name. Hey, that's her. What?
You know that's Alexis, right?
Richest girl in the galaxy? Even I know who Alexis is.
She takes the privileged but misunderstood act to a whole new level. And that's coming from an expert.
She has her own private planet called Magathar, collects rare Jovian power charms, and never wears the same shoes twice. Or at least I think that's what someone told me once.
Girl's way out of your league, bud.
No one's out of Superman's league. He's Superman.
Thanks, Brainy. Guess it doesn't matter. Not like I'm ever gonna run into her again.
Just in that moment, though, we see the aforementioned Woodhouse butler show up and knock at the door and provide Superman with a very special invitation to a charity event later on that day. We see that the Legionnaires, the rest of the Legion of Superheroes, look on in stunned silence as they cannot believe that this girl that was obviously too famous for Superman shows an interest in him. Brainiac 5 reminds Superman at this point that they already have plans. He's not going to be able to go to this exclusive elitist party for charity that she's invited him to because they have plans to go on patrol. And Superman does his very best to try and get out of his obligations, promising Brainiac 5 that he'll go 2 days in a row. Lightning Lad agrees to fill in for Superman in the meantime. So in the mission that they were supposed to be doing, going out on patrol, was looking for this group of technological thieves known as the Scavengers. But Superman, as I said, mentions to make it up to Brainiac later on, and decides. Everybody agrees at that point that since Superman decided to make it up to him, Brainiac seems okay with it. So Superman then arrives at this party just in time for the traditional rich people humiliation ritual where they just make fun of Superman immediately for wearing a cape to the party. There's a snobbish gentleman who says that they didn't realize it was a costume party as a bunch of people laugh. But just as Superman appears to be a little dejected, the aforementioned Alexis walks in to the party, and she does some verbal jujitsu of her own, kind of picking apart these other rich elitists that are making fun of Superman.
Check your, cape, sir.
I must have read the invitation wrong. I didn't realize this was a costume party.
Really? Then why'd you come looking like a stuffed lorg? Oh, is that you, Court? I'm sorry, that's how you always look, isn't it? Hey.
Hey.
Charming as always, Alexis. We're leaving.
What about your party?
They got my check. That's the only reason they invite me to these things.
Although I can't say I'm disappointed to be returning home early for once.
So, then I guess this is goodnight.
I've got a better idea.
So she walks over to a familiar-looking gentleman who's getting off of a motorbike. We'll talk about him maybe in visuals here. But she steals this guy's motorcycle and takes off, much to his chagrin. Superman flies after her and chases her up into the night sky. We see them land on a building known as the Metro Internet Building in New Metropolis. And she lands on top of the building. She mentions that she's actually the largest shareholder for this company, and she has an office there, but they're forced to break in because of an incident that occurred sometime before where some sort of unauthorized access was gained by Alexis, apparently, that caused some of the building to be destroyed. So despite that comment, Superman follows her in through an air vent, and we see them begin bonding over playing video games. There's a bit of an arcade that they play around with. You see a bunch of robots that's happening, a lot of technology that's being there. And we learn a little bit about Alexis as they continue to bond over some of the common themes in their lives, which include being hard to make friends with people. As we learn that Alexis is a bit isolated due to her status as being a rich person, and making it difficult for her to make authentic friends. And she sees Superman as somebody that could be her friend. She says that they both have high expectations set upon them and for adulthood and a lot of other things too. So they begin to bond over this commonality. And we cut back to the rest of the Legion, who has stumbled upon the Scavengers out on patrol. And they begin fighting the Scavengers. Initially, it appears that the Legion is going to take care of them, no problem. But then quickly, they are a bit overwhelmed. So they begin calling out. They send Superman an alert through his communicator, and Superman looks at it and thinking that it might be Brainiac, who had previously been bothering him before for no reason via communicator. Assuming it's the same reason he's reaching out, he turns off his communicator and ignores it. This leads to Brainiac getting his arm blown off by one of the scavengers. Again, we'll talk about that perhaps in visuals and a little bit later in the plot. But this causes the Legion to lose their fight and allows the scavengers to escape as the Legion returns to the tower back at the clubhouse there, kind of with their tails tucked between their legs, a little bit disappointed. Superman is there waiting for them, but he quickly realizes that something is amiss when he looks and sees that Brainiac's arm is missing.
What took you guys? Check it out. Alexis has this office, right? Where every game is... Hey, what happened to you?
Oh, he had a little run-in with the scavengers. They got away. What happened to you?
I called you during the fight. Why didn't you answer?
You mean that was... Guys, I'm really sorry. I just figured it was another one of Brainy's...
Let me guess. Regularly scheduled, pointless updates? No wonder he turned you off.
Incoming message. It could be the reconnaissance data I requested, or... Oh. It's from her.
Hey, Alexis got me tickets to the Polthorn races. I have no idea what that is.
Then you won't mind turning her down. We need you to help find the scavengers, Superman. And for your information, there's no Alexis in team.
Ooh, someone needs a grouchy chip removed.
He's right. I should have been there. I'll tell Alexis. She'll understand.
Yes, we see the Legion has certainly is a little bit worse for wear, as Superman realizes after Brainiac tells him that the second time he had called him while he was hanging out with Alexis, it was to ask for help in this battle. And Superman feels a little bit guilty, although the rest of the Legion points out that Brainy has a habit of checking in for useless updates, and so none of the other Legionnaires seem to blame Superman for this battle. And hey, at the end of the day, they all got home safe, and as mentioned, Brainiac just regrows his arm. So but all of that being said, Superman still feels quite guilty about it, and he decides that he's going to try to make good on that. He apologizes to the Legion and to Brainy specifically, promises it won't happen again, and he has one more dinner date scheduled with Alexis, but he's going to go just call everything off and tell her that he can't hang out, at least not while these scavengers are still at large. And as he meets her at the restaurant a little bit later, he sticks by his word. He says that he's going to have to press pause on all of these fun hangouts. He can't go with her to the races. He can't just drop everything to hang out with her because he's got his Superman duties to take care of first. And she seemingly is affable to this, but she does offer just one more hour of fun before he heads back to serious Legion business. As Superman obliges, and this quickly gives way to a bit of a montage of different wacky activities, from some kind of concert to like a batting cage, but it's like a space batting cage. Again, maybe something we'll touch on in visuals, but Superman kind of quickly realizes that while Alexis is saying that she understands and that they're almost done, she's clearly means to just continue leading him on and continuing to waste his time. So finally, he has no choice but to say that enough is enough and it's time for him to go. He heads back to the tower where Brainy is a little bit of miffed again, because apparently he missed a second patrol with all this time, but he promises from now on things will be different, and everything's going to be okay. However, we see quickly that Alexis did not take that kicking to the curb she received quite so well, as we first see that the faithful butler robot Woodhouse has arrived at the Legion Tower and informs Superman that Alexis is in danger and he needs to rush over to her, which Superman does as the dutiful hero, even getting Brainy's blessing before he leaves. And as he arrives, he notices that there's this gold armored creature sort of gangling towards Alexis. So Superman goes and engages in fisticuffs with this strange intruder. Although after a few walls and windows are broken, we see Alexis demand that everyone stop, that they're causing too much damage, at which point we see that the gold armor was nothing more than a hologram, and that it's actually once again the robot Woodhouse underneath in disguise, and that this was all just a ploy to get Superman's attention. And he once again tells her off and tells her that this is the last time that he'll be talking to her, and that he really needs to focus back on his superhero things. Specifically, he needs to go track down this scavenger group that gave the Legion so much trouble. So as she flies off, she decides a little bit of a, if we get kind of the "if I can't have you, nobody can" arc for Alexis here in this last act, as she goes to the scavengers' headquarters.
The men are getting sick of sitting here.
Then tell them again it's taking all our tech just to deflect the Legion's scanning and Saturn Girl's mind probes. We leave here, they find us, and we're not strong enough to beat them. Yet.
And how are we supposed to get stronger if we ain't out there scavenging up more tech?
So, the infamous scavengers. Please, don't get up. I think you could use my help. And I need yours.
But then the doors of the hideout explode open, and we see that Alexis and Woodhouse arrive with a bunch of new weaponry and technology for the scavengers. And she's basically come up with a, I guess, if you can't beat them, join them type of thing. As we cut to the next day, as Superman and the rest of the Legion are once again discussing their next moves when it comes to the scavengers. There's a distress call out in space, some sort of radiation leak apparently up in the upper atmosphere. Only Superman is able to go to it because they know that he's the only one that can withstand the radiation. So off he flies into space to take care of that. And right as he is gone, right as he's out of his super hearing earshot, I guess, we hear a bunch of explosions, and we see that the scavengers, along with Alexis in her own decked out robot suit, now with a lot more weapons than it had in that first scene, have invaded the Legion Tower, and they've decided that they're going to take down the Legion while Superman is distracted, which just sets up our final little bit of big time fisticuffs here.
So the battle continues on between the Legion and Alexis and the scavengers here. Superman realizes once he's drawn out into space that the beacon that's called him away has a LL logo on it. We'll find out what that means here in just a second. But he realizes that it was all a ruse and races back down to Earth. We see that Alexis and the rest of the scavengers do their very best to defeat the Legion, and then surprises that when is very surprised to see Superman show back up at the place where that she had jumped the rest of the Legion and trapped them. To see that Superman has arrived back on the scene here. And let's just say he's not very happy to see that Alexis is there, despite the fact that she tries to explain that it was all for good reason, that now that they can be friends. If actually, you know what? She decides if she's not going to be friends with him, or he's not going to be friends with her, rather, then she's got to destroy her. So if you're not with me, you're against me. Very Sith-like behavior here. So she decides that she has to destroy Superman. So she attempts to take him on. She also brings in Woodhouse, who we see has a lot of upgrades done to him with a lot of weapons. Superman immediately destroys him, like just uses heat vision and cuts his head off. Woodhouse's parting words were, "We didn't think this through, did we?" Which is great. So then it's just Superman versus Alexis and her suit, so she decides that she's going to turn on him. He makes it very clear that she's not going to be able to destroy him with just lasers. So Superman flies towards her, grabs the arm that is shooting a laser out. This causes the laser to shoot back into the mech suit, and it explodes. A giant cloud of dust is there. Superman is able to pull her from the smoke, and we see a shocking reveal that not only is Alexis okay, however, her hair has all fallen out, leaving her there bald. So we fade to black from there, and we open things back up in some sort of prison cell. We cut into a futuristic version, of course, of a prison. We see that Alexis is there. Her hair is starting to slowly grow back. She's got some short hair, and we see that she's sitting at a desk of some sort, a wooden desk, with Woodhouse's head in her hands at this point. She has a screwdriver. Interesting that in the future they let you have, like, weapons in your cell. I don't know how that works. Maybe this is a low security prison or something like that. But certainly seemed pretty high security based on the way that things looked. But anyway, she's got a screwdriver. She fixes Woodhouse. She's putting him back together, and he's very excited to be able to talk to her.
Good to see you again, mistress. Terribly sorry about what happened with the Legion.
Actually, Woodhouse, I'm grateful to them.
And why, may I ask, is that?
They helped me figure out what I want to do with my life.
As we see, she's scratched into the wood using the screwdriver, the Legion of Superheroes logo, and then stabs the screwdriver directly into the middle of the Legion logo. And we see on her prison uniform, in Interlac, which I guess is one of the languages here, we see that her last name is in fact Luthor. So it is Alexis Luthor, which explains the LL logo. And her stabbing the screwdriver in the middle of the Legion logo sets us up for any future encounters with a big bad here that just happens to be related to, the Superman's past foe. And that's where we end things for this episode. All right, Liam. We talk about this whenever we drop in, especially on these shows that we've visited so rarely that it's a little bit unfair sometimes, it feels, to try and grade these on the same scale that we do with some of the DCAU, but we're going to try here. We're going to try and do our best to do that. We're faithful to do that because that's what we committed to 390 or 89 episodes ago. So, this episode I think is fine. I think it follows a pretty predictable trope. We see the introduction of this character who wants to monopolize all of Superman's time. And when Superman begins to slack off with his responsibilities a little bit, we see the jealousy start to form, especially from Brainiac, which is interesting. I don't know how overt they were attempting to be or intentional they were trying to be, but it certainly feels like, as we talked about before we went on the air, that Brainiac feels for Superman on a different level than the rest of the superheroes do on this team. I don't know if it's strictly professional jealousy, but there seems to be a little bit of jealousy once a girl enters the picture here, and suddenly Brainiac doesn't get to spend as much one-on-one time with the Man of Steel.
Well, yeah, I assume what they're going for is that he's got like hero worship because the Legion all know that he grows up to be, Superman, the greatest hero who's ever lived, and so he's like the idea is more he's supposed to be like a fanboy, but it comes across as like he's jealous that Superman's hanging out with someone in like a romantic context. To me, that's how it comes. That felt like the subtext, which is there's not a problem with that if that was the direction they were considering. I mean, I'm guessing in 2006 that was going to be a no-go on children's television anyway. But I was like, it does feel like there's a little bit of text to it where Brainiac is jealous. I mean, to the point where, because I think on paper, I would have thought the moral of this is Superman sort of learning about responsibility, and that, it's the Spider-Man lesson, right? When you're the most powerful guy in the whole world, you have a responsibility to be there when people need you, and you don't get to just, mess around and have fun and play video games because you're not like everybody else. So it's like this like statement of purpose for Superman. But then all of the other Legionnaires are like, oh yeah, all the time he's just like making fake updates. So none of the other Legionnaires are mad or blame Superman for ignoring Brainiac's call on the one time where they get knocked around a little bit by the scavengers. So, and also as mentioned, Brainiac can regrow his arm, so he was just being dramatic. So,
that was the part that I was a little like, come on, dude. Like it is a little bit of the drama, and I understand this maybe even more so than some of the other shows that we've reviewed. Maybe more in this is probably a TVY7 audience, if I had to guess. More for this show than it would be like the TVG or TVPG. I don't know what the ratings were here in the US for Justice League towards the end there. I'm guessing TVG, but I understand that you want to create a little bit of tension, and sometimes creating tension in a children's show results in things being resolved pretty quickly without a lot of drama, especially in a 21 or 22 minute episode. But it did feel a little bit undercut that we get this. It's a little bit like Chewbacca's dead, oh no he's not, in The Rise of Skywalker type of reveal here. It's like, just kidding, his arm's not blown off, he can regrow it. This really doesn't matter that he got his arm blown off. It's not that big of a deal. The slow-mo wasn't necessary. But yeah, I think it's a fine plot. It does a little bit remind me of the Maxima episode of Superman the Animated Series towards the end, where you get the, well, if you're not on my side, then well, I guess that kind of happens in the beginning and middle of that episode of Superman the Animated Series. But you're not on my side, then I'm gonna kill you and make you or kill your friends and make you be my friend. I don't know. But I think it is interesting to give this sort of dimension to the Luthor character for this century. I like the idea of having a futuristic Luthor involved here. There's nothing more classic than a Superman and Luthor rivalry, obviously. I wonder if this came out in 2026, if you would have a bunch of people online complaining that the Luthor was gender swapped. Like seems to be one of the favorite major complaints whenever that happens. But again, it's the 31st century, so what are you going to say? Like he has to have a son at this point. So the bald thing, like, she loses her hair, so I was kind of expecting it to be a permanent condition. I wasn't expecting her to have regrown her hair by the time they show her in prison. So, but I like that. That's these are big neon signs pointing to, hey, if you didn't get it with the name Alexis, or the fact that she's like the rich, powerful person, or the LL on the big satellite, or, if you couldn't read the alien language on her shirt, then yeah, this is Luthor right here. But yeah, I like that. It's cool that they have this version of this character. I assume she goes on to play a larger role for the rest of the series. So the introduction this way, I mean, you being a huge Smallville fan, it does also kind of call back to the Smallville idea that, and which obviously calls back to, I think the original Superboy comics, where Superman and Lex weren't enemies right away. There was sort of a friendship and a camaraderie there between the two of them that eventually turns into obviously this rivalry. But I think for us, the big impact in your huge fandom of the Smallville show, that was a major plot point for the first several seasons. There was their friendship and how close they were, and for that to get flipped, obviously that plays out over a couple of seasons at least. So for that to get flipped middle of the episode here kind of reminded me of that, where it's like, hey, we're friends at first, we connect on things, we're actually very similar people on a certain level, but then something of course goes awry when the rich person can no longer be in control. So she has to upset the chessboard, so to speak. So yeah, I thought that was a decent way of introducing that kind of classic trope of them being friends and then flipping it.
Yeah, it's kind of a fun idea, and then even the idea of Superman causing the loss of the hair is right out of that original Superboy story from the 50s. Like, it's a very, I think in that one he blows out a fire and the fumes knock his hair out or something, so it's not quite the same, but yeah, it's very much that sort of classic Superboy story recontextualized here in our future show. So yeah, that's fun. As we'll get to later, we have a question about Alexis's future appearances in the show, so I did do a little research. We can get to that, but Yeah, as far as like setting up a more personal nemesis, obviously the Legionnaires have their share of villains from the comics that are introduced here, like the Fatal Five and some of those characters that pop up as recurring villains throughout the series. But yeah, giving Superman like an arch nemesis that's an individual, especially one that's a descendant of his true arch nemesis is kind of a fun gag. So that's fun. There is that thing of like it doesn't feel like he's really doing anything wrong. I guess he forgets to go on patrol, or like one time he switches and one time he forgets, but then they establish that Lightning Lad and Saturn Girl aren't are able to cover for him. So it doesn't really feel like Superman's doing anything particularly wrong in this episode,
right?
By the other Legionnaires, except for Brainiac. So it is that thing where it doesn't really feel like Superman learns a lesson, other than like, I guess, be more respectful of other people's time, which is a good lesson. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like it doesn't feel like super earned, or like the consequences of him not doing it were big enough. Because again, the only thing that happens is that Brainiac gets his arm blown off and then he just regrows it. So if like Brainiac just didn't have an arm for the rest of the series after that would be an interesting, consequence of his actions. But as it was, it's just really an excuse to have Brainiac pout a bit. So yeah, overall, I didn't hate it. I think it's kind of a fun idea. It definitely does have, it's like a mix, like you said, of those golden age Superboy stories and maybe a little bit of Smallville, which of course would have been on the air at the same time here. So I settled on a 5 out of 10 for my plot. I enjoyed it for what it was, but I don't feel like the interpersonal stuff between the Legion is as strong as it could be.
Yeah, that's why I ended up settling on a 5 out of 10 myself. I think it's interesting. Like there's some crumbs of a good setup here, and I get it did have I mean, we're only 3 episodes in technically at this point from the 3 episodes into the full series. This is the 3rd episode, so you're still doing some establishing of characters and their behaviors and their relationships, and obviously you're introducing a brand new character here that's going to play a large role or a larger role throughout the entire series. So you have a lot of stuff that you have to do to cram into this episode. I don't know. Maybe I'm not going to Monday morning quarterback the plot, but I think it did have a lot to do for this episode. And I think creating that interpersonal dynamic between Superman and the Legion as like a tension point, I think you probably could have either focused more on that, like make that the central thing, and have the Alexis thing maybe saved for a different episode, or kind of just culminate at the end. Or like you said, it kind of needs to be established, like what's the lesson here? Does Brainiac sort of in the middle of the episode kind of just relents and lets Superman do what he wants to? Like it feels like there's like a point where he's just kind of like, whatever, dude. But we don't really see that take hold as like a, hey, he's not really my friend anymore, or we're just teammates. I don't want to have a friendship with you type, which could have been, I think, a little bit more interesting. But yeah, so 5 out of 10 for me as far as plot is concerned. All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category, which is going to be animation and visuals. As you mentioned, I believe Dong Wu responsible for our animation for this week's episode. Yeah, so we can talk a little bit about this. I'm sure we probably did, maybe. I don't know. It was a long time ago. But obviously, as you mentioned, James Tucker responsible with a couple others as far as the animation is concerned, the character designs. I know he worked with Mike Zeck, I think is the guy who did like the final pass-throughs on a lot of the designs for the show Bible. But James Tucker did a lot of the actual turns and stuff like that for the episode. So once you say that, you can kind of see like the Brave and the Bold influence, or vice versa here. Like you can kind of see that these are James Tucker designs, kind of based on the heads of the characters, the shoulders. He's got a unique looking. They kind of like got longer necks and shorter heads, and kind of they still have the squared features that you would expect from a Kirby like influence there, but it is certainly his own style. It's not a Bruce Timm. It's not a it's not a Glenn Murakami. It's maybe somewhere in between those two, actually. It's kind of like they had a baby a little bit. You see some anime influence in there, but you certainly have a little bit more traditional comic book styling to it as well. Thoughts here. I think what's interesting right off the bat, I noticed that Alexis, she kind of looks like I think Daphne from, I thought it was Daphne from Scooby-Doo at first. She's got the long red hair, and obviously she's styled after a Luthor. She's wearing purple, which traditionally, Luthor in the Super Friends character wears that big purple shirt with the collar flipped up around his neck. Purple, certainly a traditional character, a color matching with like the green that he typically wears in his power suit. But she is wearing that purple suit at the beginning with the purple shoes, and she's got green pants on. So the purple and green do match our typical Luthor stylings there as well. But she's cool. She's got like, very clearly she's got some like freckles on her face. I like her design. She looks very different than I feel like the rest of the females that we see for this episode. Saturn Girl and Ghost Girl look they don't all look like the same character, just switched with hair color, which you could argue that sometimes that the Bruce Timm models for the DCAU could be interchangeable with the way they look based on his styling. So I do like that their eyes are different, their facial features are different, their facial shapes are different also. So that, I mean, as far as the show look itself, I do like the way that the animation moves. It's pretty fluid in a lot of things. I didn't have a ton of notes for like the things that stood out to me animation wise. There is one shot where Lightning Lad at the end shoots a lightning bolt at the scavengers when they break in after they've had these technological advances. He doesn't, of course, realize that they've been upgraded, and then you follow the lightning bolt out of his hand, hits the scavenger, and then it bounces back off and you follow it back and it hits Lightning Lad right in the chest. I thought that sequence was probably the most unique of the episode. But there's a lot of good stuff here. We got robots fighting and as we already mentioned, I think Woodhouse, by the way, is based on the design for one of the Battlestar Galactica robots, also as a cameo. He kind of has the same face as, I'm not a Battlestar fan, so Battlestar fans, if you're listening, you'll have to forgive me. But he has this same like helmet shape as the traditional Battlestar Galactica Cylon. Yeah, that's what he kind of looks like. So that's nice because that's a pretty memorable and obvious design there. So the fact that we're in the future, that show obviously takes place in a certain future, so including that there seems like a good fit there. So yeah, that's what stood out to me animation wise. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I have a few other little notes. I too enjoy the character designs. I do agree. Everybody's different body types, different hairstyles. It's definitely a little bit more unique in the character design department, which is a cool. Like you said, not everybody's the barrel chested guy or the sort of the svelte woman. There's some little bit of uniqueness to that, which I appreciate there. Yeah, I like all the Legion designs. Phantom Girl has like a little. It's like in like a black light effect when she's phasing, and it also has like a little Kirby crackle to it, which I think is a neat touch, like this white and black little dots that sort of form as she's coming in or out of a wall or the floor or whatever, which I think is a neat idea. The sequence where I think you mentioned it, where Lightning Lad is sort of firing the lightning bolts as he's flying through the corridor and it gets knocked back at him is really interesting. I do like the upgraded Woodhouse design that Superman, the bit where Woodhouse shows up and like with all his new gear and Superman immediately lasers his arms and head off, I thought was great visual comedy. It is one of those things where the way this final fight goes, you are a little bit like, could the rest of the Legion just stay home from like 99% of these battles? Because Superman literally cannot be injured by any of this, and they're barely holding their own. But no, that I thought that was a very fun gag, and it also just shows that even if Alexis is smart, she's also very impulsive. But that's a very funny gag. Yeah, I think some of the design choices are fun, like the when they do the montage and you see like the galactic batting cages and like whatever that weird like some of those other events that she takes him to are a lot of fun. And then on top of all that, we'll start with that sequence. Speakingly, we also do have a couple of other DC Easter eggs. We could say they're DCAU Easter eggs, I suppose, because when Superman hits a baseball in that galactic batting cage, it goes flying off into space and clanks off a satellite, which happens to look a lot like the season 1 and 2 Justice League Watchtower, which is a fun gag. And then, of course, James Tucker also working as a producer on that show before coming over to do his own thing with this one. And then, when Alexis steals a flying motorcycle after they are leaving the gala, the guy that she steals it from certainly looks a bit familiar. If he's not the same guy, he might be like a grandson or something.
Yeah, I dare say he's at least Zarnian in race. We know that.
Right.
Whether or not it is Lobo himself, I don't know how Lobo would have gotten to the 31st century. However, we don't know how Zarnian's age either, or maybe this universe's Lobo was not around in Superman's time. Who knows? But it is certainly a cameo that is meant to invoke Lobo, and it's one of those cool moments where it's the Leo DiCaprio moment. You snap your finger, you whistle, and you point with Lobo there on the screen as Alexis steals his motorcycle. It's not his classic hog with the skull on the front of it either, but so maybe it isn't Lobo, but certainly it's a nice wink and nod to those who know.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a fun gag, and then so a lot of my notes were based on the character designs. Again, maybe just because we don't we haven't reviewed much of this show, but I enjoyed all of that. The only thing is, like, in the opening sequence, in the title sequence, they show this bit where Brainiac transforms into like a big transformer guy. And unless he like learns that power later in the season and he doesn't get it, it is that thing where I started getting pissed off that he wasn't turning into that guy at all during this fight, especially when they're getting overwhelmed. It's like, well, you could turn into like a 9-foot tall mecha, and instead you're just like making little shields. So I was like, Brainiac, get your head in the game. But yeah, I think that's obviously just a minor gripe. But no, I think it's pretty fun visually. Animation seems very fluid. Obviously, we're not really able to judge if everybody's on model for the whole episode. Everybody seemed to be, but obviously we don't watch this consistently. So overall, like I said, I like all the robot designs and the redesigned scavenger outfits. These like red armor suits that they're in are a lot of fun. And that whole sequence at the end. So I ended up giving visuals a pretty solid 7 out of 10.
Nice. Yeah, I just went 1 point lower. I went with a 6 out of 10 for my score. I will before I go on here, in case there are any Battlestar Galactica fans listening, I did my research. So Cylons are a race of sentient robots created by robots. So robots creating robots, certainly nothing we have to fear about. So please forgive me. That's what I believe that our Woodhouse model is based off of, specifically in his face there. So anyway, you mentioned the scene with Superman playing baseball. I really loved that also, because that feels right out of like the Silver Age of Superman like covers. Like there are if you Google Superman plays baseball cover, there are like 50 different versions, including a Superboy cover of him playing baseball by himself, playing all positions in the infield, which is really, really funny. There's a couple of also pretty famous World's Finest covers with him and Batman and Robin all playing baseball. So again, that felt with that, it felt very fun to as a callback to kind of that age of Superman. Just as American as it gets, Superman and America's pastime go hand in hand. There's also a Superman Adventures cover. I forgot where Superman playing baseball.
Right.
I believe it's Superman Adventures number 13, where he plays space baseball, where he's playing it on the cover rather. So, yeah, Superman and baseball go hand in hand. So the fact that he went to a batting cage where he could play space baseball is another plus for this episode. So some solid scores there from us for an episode that for a show rather that we don't cover very often. All right, Liam, let's move on to our next category, shall we? Which is music. And as you mentioned, our dynamic music partners are at work for this one. I believe the theme credit goes to Christopher Carter, but the rest of the episode, all three of our dynamic music partners joined in with Lolita Ritmanis and Michael McQuestion also helping out with the music for this episode. This right away, I think there's a little bit more music, and you can kind of hear some of the influence that would later kind of play into some of the Brave and the Bold stuff play out here for this as well. Something that's it's definitely a little bit more lively, I would say, than we're used to. There's a little bit more character, I feel like, to the music than maybe some of the stuff that was kind of just atmospheric for Justice League Unlimited and some of those later seasons. It sounds a little bit more pushed to the forefront. What I like about this episode is that you do get a really different vibe once these scavenger characters are brought in. They have a real techno stuff that really, I mean, to me, it felt like it was drawing inspiration from Mr. Carter and potentially Mr. McQuestion and Miss Ritmanis' previous work with Beyond. It definitely sounds more futuristic, heavier. Not the electric guitars, but certainly like the traditional synthesizer sounds and things that were a little bit more techno sounding. But then they mix it in with the Legion theme song when the Legion shows up, which I really appreciated. So it kind of plays well together. That gets like a techno remix to it as they're fighting these scavenger groups. There's of course music that kind of plays into creating tension and setting excitement for various different of the rest of the fight sequences. I think the sequence with Superman and Alexis kind of bouncing from thing to thing as she's trying to kind of monopolize his time as he's claiming that he has time's running out. He can't spend any more time with her, and she kind of keeps dragging him along to various different things. I kind of liked that montage, which included the aforementioned baseball scene. So yeah, there's some good stuff here. I don't know if I missed any musical notes or highlights that you wanted to mention there, or what stood out to you.
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of them. The only one I had here, I think, was when Superman shows up to fight the fake bad guy who is apparently attacking Alexis, which we find out is Woodhouse in disguise when he's like this big gold armored guy. There's like some of that like techno. It feels like boss fight music kicks in that scene. I think it comes back a little bit later when Alexis makes her grand villain interest at the end, but it's like this real like techno dance music. It feels like something you would have heard in the background of like a Super Nintendo boss fight or something. So I think that's got a fun retro future vibe to it, which I feel like is kind of the whole thing here. So yeah, I enjoyed that a lot. And music actually also got a 7 out of 10 from me because of it.
Yeah, and once again, I was just 1 point lower than you. I gave it a 6 out of 10 for me. I think there's some good solid stuff there, and we both appreciated it. Appreciated it solidly there. Great stuff from our dynamic music partners. All right, Liam, and that will begin to take us to our final category of the day, and that will be voice actors and actresses for our voice cast. Let's talk about this small but mighty cast for this week's episode, shall we?
Absolutely. It is a very small cast, but we'll go over our main characters here, starting with Heather Hogan, the voice of Phantom Girl. Not much for her to do here, but she does a lot of the exposition explaining who Alexis is, that she's this famous fashion icon and socialite. She does get one little quip in about how she never really liked Alexis's fashion anyway, so she's excited to beat her up. But you might know Miss Hogan. She did the voice in a lot of those Land Before Time movies of the 90s, which I don't think we ever watched any of, but there was always like a commercial for them on like every it felt like every DVD or VHS we had. There would always be the next one would be coming out. There was like 15 of these, so she voiced Ducky in those. Does a good job here. We have Andy Milder as the Lightning Lad. He's maybe best known for his role on the series Weeds, and a few other things as well, including like Apollo 13, and he's still active in the voice acting role as well. But Lightning Lad in this show is kind of he's the chop buster. He's the sarcastic, kind of ironic, pain in the butt but with a heart of gold guy. And again, we just kind of get a little taste of it here, but he is kind of like he's egging Superman on to go on the first date, and he's like kind of and he's kind of putting down Brainiac 5 at the same time because everybody kind of finds him annoying, and he's like, hey, let's give Superman a reason to be annoyed by Brainiac too. So he's kind of stirring the pot a little bit. But yeah, he's fun as like kind of the team troublemaker in a limited role.
Yeah, he does a good job. He's also he defends Superman a little bit from Brainiac's overbearing like nonsense, which I like. But he's also kind of like, hey, like, why did you turn off your communicator? Like, hey, what's going on? Kind of left us out to dry. So he's not so Team Superman that he's blind to the fact that that he can be wrong. But he does have Superman's back a lot here, and is quick to point out that Brainiac is a unique fella, that's for sure.
Absolutely. And elsewhere in our Legion, we have Carrie Walgren voicing Saturn Girl. Maybe best known now, she's done a lot of voices for things like Rick and Morty and the Kung Fu Panda animated series. I believe she also voices Miss Martian on the Young Justice show as well. So we've talked about her a few times before. But I think she doesn't have a lot to do. She also voices Triplicate Girl on the show, who is not in this episode, but she's also there with kind of right alongside Lightning Lad, kind of telling Brainiac he's being annoying and doing some exposition, but not a lot for her to do either, but does a solid job certainly. And then we have Adam Wiley as the voice of the aforementioned Brainiac 5, maybe best known for the show Picket Fences, which apparently ran from 88 episodes.
Whoa.
Even though I've never heard of it before I was doing this. But, back in the day, syndication, more television series, shows would just run forever. And he was on one there, but he's also done quite a few voices like in the Smurfs animated films and some other things here. But he has that sort of, I think certainly the way his character design is drawn, I guess he's supposed to be the youngest one of the team. Like maybe he's barely even a teenager, if at all. And so he has this kind of like whiny, he's young Sheldon, isn't he? He's just like an annoying, like nerd. He's this nerd who's not very socially adept, and he doesn't really know how to communicate his emotions. Well, I guess he's part computer, so he's part Brainiac. So I guess that's part of it too. But yeah, as mentioned, a lot of his dialogue comes off to me, and I don't think this is necessarily a problem with the actor, Mr. Wiley here, but like he does come off more as like a jealous, jilted, romantic prospect than he does as like a hurt friend in this episode, which is interesting. Maybe that's just him trying to sell like the idea of like how much Brainiac idolizes Superman and wants to spend kind of as much time with him as possible. But it is funny that we both kind of had that note before we went on the air that I'm like, is there romantic subtext to his sort of pining for Superman, or is it purely just hero worship? We'll let the listeners be the judge. But as far as what's asked of him, I think Mr. Wiley does a good job.
Yeah, he's fine. He does. I think it's a tough balance to create a character or voice a character rather that is part. You're supposed to be half emotional, like only half of you is emotional.
Yes.
Like what part of you is computer and what part isn't. I don't know that this episode does that. I don't know that it was asked of him to do that. It's hard to tell. Like when he just kind of is accepting of Superman and like, hey, go check out to see what that distress call is. Like, is he really accepting of it, or is that like the computer processor part of him? Like, was that intentional? I don't know. It's hard to tell. I think this would be one that I would want to see more episodes of to kind of understand the nuances of the performance. That being said, I think it's a fine performance this time. There does seem to be some human emotion in his disappointment in Superman's inability to spend time with him and missing out on that companionship, whether it be strictly platonic or otherwise. But yeah, I don't have any problem with the performance here. I think I'd give it an incomplete grade if I could, just because again,
Yeah.
I don't know how that goes for the rest of the series, but this episode in a vacuum, fine.
Absolutely. And then we have our main hero and our main villain to talk about. We'll start with the villain. We have playing Alexis, the girl who would be Superman's arch enemy, perhaps one day. Tara Strong, of course, we've talked about her 10,000 times, the voice of Batgirl in the new Batman Adventures and other projects. And of course, the voice of Raven in Teen Titans. It's another one of those voice actors where it's hard to say original things about her because we've talked about her so much. She's good. Like she plays, you could tell it's her right away. But I mean, she plays that sort of, spoiled rich girl with and then I think where she maybe shines in this one is once the full villainous turn takes place and she's more overtly sinister. I feel like that's when maybe she shines in this episode.
Yeah, I agree. I think she initially it's hard to kind of get a read on her, but when she does start to kind of break down in that one scene where she's kind of trying to emotionally connect with Superman, I think there's some good stuff there. And then ultimately, I think it's a little bit mixed, I'd say, in the final episode. She doesn't quite come off as like I'm seeking revenge. Like initially when she breaks into the scavengers hideout and she's like, "Here, have this technology." It does feel like she's kind of getting revenge, but then when Superman shows up, it's a little less of an edge to it. But I think we finally, in that final scene where she's talking with Woodhouse, we do see that, that she's kind of come out of her cage a little bit there and is a little more psychotic. So yeah, I do think that she's really solid. And I would be interested in seeing more and of her in the rest of the series to see what her performance looks like. But hard to doubt that there isn't some really good stuff coming here based on her voice acting pedigree.
Absolutely. And then finally, we have our Superman, or a young Superman voice to talk about, that being Yuri Lowenthal, who folks would probably at this point in his career, I would think he's one of the main Marvel video game Spider-Man voice actors, including playing Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, and the two modern Insomniac PlayStation 4 and 5 games. And I think he also plays him in the Marvel Rivals game and a bunch of other places. Also voiced the slightly older Ben 10 in the revamped version of that show. And yeah, I think we talked about this last time we talked about Jack Quaid. I think it's just him and Mr. Lowenthal here, the only two people to have voiced both Spider-Man and Superman in their career, at least to this point. So a feather in a superhero feather in Yuri Lowenthal's cap. But yeah, I think he's a fine young Superman. He has, I think, that inherent goodness that you look for in a Superman voice. But there is still like a naivete to it, and there is still a little bit of this guy's a teenager. Like he isn't quite fully formed into who he's going to be. So he does still kind of want to slack off and have fun and be a kid sometimes. And I think Mr. Lowenthal walks that line pretty well.
No, yeah, I think again, we're reviewing this in a vacuum. There might be episodes where this isn't the case, but I do feel like for what the arc the character has to go through in this, where he's he's kind of blown away a little bit, starstruck in a way, with this girl once he realizes who she is. He's clearly romantically interested in her. Then the fact that she, extends this invite to him and wants to talk to him, knows who he is, remembers who he is, like that kind of blows him away. And then he's kind of go through this awkward bit where he's feeling uncomfortable being made fun of by these other rich elite people, and then he kind of lets his guard down a little bit, and he's kind of wondering who this person actually is. And it's quite the roller coaster that the character itself has to go through here. And I think he nails it. I think as a teenager, like, you can kind of put yourself in a teenager's shoes there, and kind of like, okay, you're interested in this girl, but you're curious, and you're feeling uncomfortable because other people are making fun of you, and you kind of want to let your guard down, but is this person somebody you can trust? And there is a little naivete, as you mentioned, to it, where it's like, oh, I'm gonna do these things that maybe I'm not super comfortable with, breaking into a building, or like these wild adventurous things that I wouldn't normally do to, get some adrenaline. And yeah, so like, I do think that we see that throughout the journey here. And then ultimately when he kind of yells at her at the end, when she's shooting this laser at him, and he's like, you're not going to be able to destroy me. We see the more heroic, and like, okay, this is a super boy that's becoming a Superman here. And we're just kind of along for the journey here. So I like it. I like that we kind of see that both sides of this character here, which would make sense where this character is in his life. I mean, I remember when I was a teenager, there were certain times where, I felt like an adult, and I felt like I knew what I was doing, and I felt confident. And there were other times where I felt very, very much like a child, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing, and confused and a little less confident. So I like that. I think that comes out in this performance here with our Superman.
Absolutely. So yeah, for all that being said, I think our lead villain and hero do a good job, but not much else for the rest of our supporting cast. But I settled on a 6 out of 10 for my voice score.
Nice. I just went 1 point higher. I think our two leads here for the episode did a lot for me. I went with a 7 out of 10. But yeah, we're right around that same score there. Yeah, so some solid performances here. Again, it's hard to look at this cast and crew in a vacuum like this for an episode. I'm sure there might be better episodes out there for us to review in the future. If you're one of the hard and loyal fans for this series, and you have a suggestion for us, tweet at us on Twitter X at DCAU Review, slide into the DMs at DCAU Review on Instagram, or hey, buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU Review and suggest that next one if you're interested in hearing more reviews for that. But Liam, that will begin to wrap us up. So let's get our totals for today. And adding everything up here for my final scores, I ended up with a 24 out of 40.
And I'm just 1 point higher at 25 out of 40. And as we wrap up, we usually talk about rewatchability. Obviously, for Elseworlds, we don't really do that because we're just dropping in on a random episode of these shows as opposed to watching the whole series. But yeah, I'd like to see more of this series. I feel like that's the theme of this review, is just like, we haven't sat with this enough. We haven't gotten like a baseline for it like we have for Brave and the Bold or The Batman, or even maybe we're starting to get with something like My Adventures with Superman that's more recent. So yeah, I would love to revisit a couple more episodes of this show, and maybe we can start thinking in those terms somewhere down the line. But it's a fine little outing. Although if I was trying to get someone to watch the show, I wouldn't necessarily name this episode. But that's also difficult for me, as having not seen every other episode of this show except the pilot for, almost exactly 20 years.
Yeah, I guess it would probably depend on how important the Alexis character is for the rest of this season and maybe season 2, on how important it is to know her origin and how, the secrets of her past and how she came to be, so to speak.
Well, and that actually, I think, will lead us in nicely, Cal, to our question of the week, which of course is brought to you by buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review.
What a transition.
And that question is from our buddy Zach, who has dropped another one. And he said, one, he notes that he did not know this show existed before us. So we're happy to get it out there. Yeah, I think this show's a little hard to find on streaming at the moment. There is a Blu-ray set that completed the whole series. So there is an HD version out this if you wish to obtain this legally. There is that way for you currently. And hopefully, like many other DC animation, perhaps it'll be popping up on Tubi or one of these other free stations, which is now the home of Static Shock and other things that had disappeared off of
Batman the Animated Series got announced today too. They're putting the full details on it too. So yeah, we love the awesome. Wonderful more Tubi app. Aren't we large fans of the streaming service Tubi?
Absolutely. And but back to Zach's question here, he said that and this is correct. I did confirm Zach's research here that Alexis unfortunately only has 2 other cameos in the series and doesn't actually appear again in a full episode. So Zach's question is, what do you think would have been a good storyline if Alexis returned for additional episodes? And he notes that he would have liked to have seen maybe more of a complex will they, won't they romantic thing, a la Batman and Catwoman with Superman. Which is, that's certainly an interesting one. I like that. Great question from Zach. Yeah, it is interesting because they definitely feels like they set her up to be one of the big bads of the series. And perhaps if they had gone above 2 seasons, they would have. But she never really has a full appearance. I think she appears in a couple other episodes when they visit the prison, but we don't really get to see her in action, or she no longer has a voiced role after this episode. So yeah, I certainly would have liked to have seen her, maybe, I mean, again, maybe this is too fan servicey, which I feel like is becoming a recurring theme when I answer our questions, but is it too much to ask that she does like a Descendants of Superman's other foes, like Legion of Doom or Superman Revenge Squad, where it's like, Parasite Jr. and Metallo 3 and whatever, and we just get like a bunch of classic Superman villains in techie futuristic suits, and they all come, or she does her own version of a Bizarro or something. I think maybe that's the route I would go if this character was going to come back in a major way.
Yeah, I don't know that I would go up straight romance for them or a will they, won't they type thing. I like the idea almost of Superman feeling guilty in a way. I mean, we saw that play out with a couple of different characters in Batman the Animated Series. Maybe Two-Face not so much because in a way with Two-Face, because Batman had that relationship with Harvey ahead of time, but obviously he couldn't stop the explosion that turns Harvey Dent into Two-Face. So I like the idea that maybe Superman feels a bit of responsibility there. He wasn't able to necessarily be this person, this friend that she was looking for. Yes, she had unrealistic and clearly psychotic expectations at some point when she decided to try and kill all his friends in order to be his only friend. But I do like the idea that Superman maybe feels a twinge of guilt of maybe pushing her further. That I feel like plays into that, whether it's obviously not his responsibility, but I think the idea of a teenager feeling like something that was in and around them that they were a part of, that there was some sort of responsibility that they had, even if it's not true, that's a realistic thing for people of any age to sort of cling to. Like, hey, what if I had done this differently or made this decision or said this thing separately? And then Alexis just kind of just being straight up hey, you burn this bridge, screw you because of it. So that would have been the direction that I would have gone in if I was the pencil behind the writing team here. It is absolutely shocking, though, based on how this episode goes, that they did not use this character, because it feels like you're setting up what's going to be a series long arc here. And again, we know that they only had 2 seasons, but yeah, it very, very much feels like this is set up for, all right, she's going to break out later and she's going to exact revenge in some form or fashion here. And we have a Luthor Superman battle just, several centuries in the future, 10 centuries in the future. So yeah, it's a little disappointing, but love that question from Zach. Zach, thanks for sending that in this week. And if you'd like to join Zach in the growing list of supporters for the pod, we invite you again, head over to buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review and support the podcast today. Join us at that super friend tier to get your own question answered on the air. Liam, we'd like to remind the good folks at home other ways to support the podcast. If you don't want to join us at buymeacoffee.com/DCAU review, include following us on social medias at DCAU review. You can like us we're active on Twitter, X, and Instagram pretty frequently. And then we do use some of those other ancillary Twitter-like platforms, even Facebook occasionally. But best way to get in touch with us is Instagram and Twitter X. You can also, of course, shout us out there. You can leave a comment if you're listening on Spotify. They allow comments there. We're getting comments almost weekly here from people listening to old episodes, listening to current episodes. So if you're listening, leave a comment. We do our best to review those and reply there as well if you don't use the traditional social media avenues. While you're on Spotify, subscribe to us, leave a 5-star review. That helps us out in the all important algorithm. Also follow us on Spotify. You can do that there. That helps us out a lot. You can also subscribe to us, of course, on any podcast app, the major ones at least, including Apple. And if you listen to us on Apple and you'd like a little thank you, you can leave a 5-star review for the podcast. And if we read your review here on the air, we will send you a special gift, provided you are here within the continental United States. You can also check out our show notes where you'll find the Buy Me a Coffee link, and you'll also find a link to our store as well as our social medias. Check that out. Those are the best ways to support the podcast. Liam, we are leaving the Elseworlds behind for at least another month as we head back to the DCAU proper for a stay. And we are leaving last we visited the DCAU, we were in the sunny skies of Metropolis. We are moving slightly across the map in whichever direction you believe. I believe probably closer to the central part of America. And we are going to be headed to the sunny skies of Dakota for a trip back to Static Shock. And we just realized we don't got a ton left to review when it comes to Static Shock. We are in the final 4 episodes left here. So we'll be digging into those starting with next week's episode.
Absolutely. So one of our last Statics to be reviewed will be the episode Linked from the final season. We've got a couple of football players with secret Bang Baby powers trying not to be exposed, and Static and Gear getting caught up in a little bit of a power struggle. So interesting to see how that relates to our previously seen episode involving basketball players. Although I think these are just actors, and they aren't played by any real life horrible people. So that's our no Fruit Squad. But we'll talk about the episode of Link next week. And yes, we return to Static's City of Dakota.
Excited to check that one out with you. It should be an interesting one. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the next episode of the DCAU Review.
Bye-bye.